On the latest episode of the Presser Wine Prince Lyrics podcast, we're going to simply dance on, while poring over the lyrics to this Lovesexy track. My dance partner for this episode is the one and only Eloy Lasanta. Welcome back to the show, Eloy.
Ow! Hey, thank you for having me back on. I wish I had some reverb. I have to have some echo or some reverb on that. Man, I should have set that up.
Yeah. Don't ask me to do that in post-production because I have no idea how to work on that. So it's just going to have to be raw, just like it is.
There you go. But thanks for having me on, Jason. I always love coming and talking with you.
I appreciate you being on the show because, you've been doing this for a while and, we've collaborated on a few songs and I know you dig Lovesexy. I mean, I've seen your episodes on the Prince's Friend YouTube channel enough to know Lovesexy is your jam, like the album, like you really dig it.
Well, and here's an interesting point. Here's an interesting thing of why when you said, is there a song that you would want to do? And I was like, yeah, Dance On. Is if you go to Prince's Friend and you watch my opening sequence, I actually use Prince's Ow from the beginning as part of my intro. The rest of it is other music, but I was just like, I need something in there. And just the beginning of this with just his Ow is just like, oh, it's just so perfect.
Yeah. So it's a perfect episode for you to join me on.
Exactly.
For sure. If for no other reason than to make sure our listeners knew that that's where that ow came from. It's from Dance On. All right. Well, Dance On is kind of like smack dab in the middle of the album. We've had this big emotional moment with Anastasia and, at this point we've had a couple of singles, Alphabet Street and Glam Slam. So we're trying to the album itself is kind of feeling like it's trying to tell us something, trying to give us a message. Some songs and more overtly than others, like on I Know. But this is then it kind of reverts back to a little bit of a song that's seemingly on the surface that doesn't have a whole lot to do with the narrative. But I think as we go through the lyrics, I don't know, I kind of feel like this song, Dance On, speaks more to the narrative of the Lovesexy album than even Alphabet Street does. I don't know what your overarching thoughts are on the song in terms of like how it fits in with the album, its placement. I know you're a track listing kind of guy, so what are your thoughts on that?
I am. Sequencing is entirely super important, and out of the 9 songs, the fact that it's in the middle is kind of this. It would be the song that would be like everything's changed now, but it's actually kind of not. This is kind of the last part of the first half. Half is used relatively weirdly there. But, I know to Dance On is like half of the story, leading up to then the 6th track being where the Lovesexy, where Prince has the revelation. So Anastasia is where he's kind of at his lowest point, and Dance On is where he's looking around and he's seeing how crazy the world is and all of the death and destruction and devastation and corruption and all of these different things. And that's why then the next song is Lovesexy, because I have made the decision to, devote my life to God. And then that's why When Two Are in Love and I Wish You Heaven and Positivity and all these great, uplifting kind of songs come after that. But Dance On is kind of the last of the downer songs on the album, even though it's super upbeat, but subject matter wise, I will say.
Yeah, for sure, because the song gives me kind of similar vibes to songs like 1999's lyrics, or 1999's lyrics say one thing when the music says another, which is kind of like what this song does. Mm-hmm. While a song like Sign of the Times, the music and lyrics are kind of speaking the same language, I feel like. And this one almost leans more to, lyrics that speak of serious topics, but the music is real fun and bouncy and, the chorus is dance on, dance on. So,
Yeah.
it doesn't have that dour kind of feel to it when you're listening to it without paying attention to the lyrics. But,
Well,
again,
it's
this is a
interesting.
lyrics podcast, so we'll do
I
that.
think you're right there, though, because I think it serves two different things, right? And could be interpreted in two different ways. It could be interpreted as all of these terrible things are happening, but we have to keep going.
Hmm.
And that's why it's kind of upbeat. Or you can take it as, I guess, the more cynical kind of interpretation, which is kind of the way that I take it, which is look at all of these terrible people ignoring the bad stuff because they're just dancing. But then there's this death over here. They're just dancing. Oh, but there's nuclear war. Everybody's just dancing. So there's two different ways. Like you have to dance on through it, or everybody's just dancing and ignoring the bad stuff. I like to use the second one myself.
Yeah, I mean, Prince doesn't really clarify that for us throughout this
Yeah.
song because the chorus is very simple. There's nothing. The verses are one thing. They tell a story, or they tell kind of a story, like pulled from the headlines type lyrics, and the chorus being just dance on does leave it completely up to interpretation and how you want to apply those that message of dancing on
Yeah.
one of the two ways. I like the fact that there's more than one kind of interpretation, just like with most of Prince's songs. That's one of the things that I found. A lot of his music offers multiple interpretations. I'd be curious to see. I bet it'd be almost like 50-50 split between how people interpret this song. I think it's um, pretty easy to take either one of them and say, like, this is the one I like, or this is the one I think he was saying or trying to say, and run with it, because they both work.
Well, and I think it also kind of like what we were saying before, it does matter of whether you're just taking the song as itself or if you're taking the song as part of the album.
Yeah.
I had this discussion about a lot of different Prince songs, and people are like, "You're crazy to think that it means that," and I'm like, "Well, like if on its face, maybe not, but albums matter, right? So like you have to take the entire album and the story being told as part of the equation is to the overall meaning, and not everybody does that because we live in a world where people are listening to a single song, and they're like, yeah, the rest of the album was fine, I guess, but I really like this song. And it's just like, yeah, but I mean, and it maybe
Hmm.
people don't make albums like that anymore, but like any albums I make are always, there's a story to it, even if it doesn't seem like there is. So anyway, yes.
If any album of Prince's was he wanted you to listen to as kind of
Hmm?
one long cohesive moment, it'd be Lovesexy because of the way he tracked it initially.
Yes.
So this was his vision for this album very clearly, like to listen to it all together. This was to be the fifth quote unquote track, even though it was all one track on the original CD. So yeah, it does make a difference in 1988 when it was released that this was supposed to be listened to all together, and instead of broken up as I mean, he didn't release this song as a single. A song like Alphabet Street, I think, can easily be pulled out of the narrative of the Lovesexy album and just be its own thing. Even a song like Glam Slam, it doesn't really change anything. I don't think too much with the lyrics. Me personally, that's my opinion, but I don't think it changes a lot of the lyrics if you pull it out of the album and listen to it by itself.
Right.
But this song, I mean, it certainly can. It certainly can, considering its placement behind Anastasia, before Lovesexy, and also the two different interpretations of what that chorus is really trying to tell the listener, being, whether it's dancing on because you're trying to forget your woes, like in 1999, or people are just ignoring everything and just dancing because they don't see what's right in front of them, all the social ills.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, the whole releasing it as a single track thing, when Prince was alive, if I think he allowed it on some streaming platforms, and if you went to the streaming platforms, it was still there as one track. It wasn't until
Never wavered on that, huh?
yeah, no, it wasn't until after he passed and the estate took over and started putting it on every, platform and all that stuff again, that it then got separated out. And honestly, for the longest time, it wasn't even available. I don't even know why. I don't know if they were still trying to figure out if they could go around Prince's wishes or whatever. Who knows? But like, I'm pretty sure Prince always still wanted to have this as a single track. It is an experience of an album. It is not just a collection of songs.
No. I mean, that was kind of like one of the, I wouldn't say critiques of Sign of the Times, because it's hard to really critique that album, but I think a lot of people kind of felt like Sign of the Times was just a collection of music, and it didn't tell as much of a story, or maybe the stories that it told were more contained, like in the different sides of a vinyl album. But as a whole, I mean, it's hard to, with a few exceptions like Pink Floyd's The Wall and 9 Inch Nails' The Fragile, to like have a double album that is telling still a story from beginning to end. That's a lot of music to tell a story in, which, I mean, there's long films out there. There's 2-3 plus hour movies out there telling stories. So why can't an album do that, in super long length? But this one is, I agree, is definitely telling us a story from beginning to end in a way that, I don't think Sign of the Times was really trying to do necessarily. And that was, considered one of his premier albums of the 80s. So it's not always important for an album to tell a story, I don't think, for listeners to enjoy it. But when an artist does it, I just value that so much, because it kind of gives you some insight into their creative process. It gives you insight beyond just, I'm a really good songwriter, I can make some jams. What else are you trying to say? And artists, some people don't look for their artists to tell them anything about who they are or what they're into or what their message is. But I think anybody who listens to Prince long enough figures out that there's a lot of messages in his music. And if you're really just looking at his music from the surface, that's cool. But I love I love artists that have that ability, and Prince obviously did.
Well, I think that is basically what differentiates somebody who can play a song versus an artist. Because an artist's drive is to be provocateurs. That is what art is supposed to be. Like, nobody paints a picture and then just says, cool, I painted a picture. It's like, no, what do you think about this picture? What do you feel about this picture? What do you think that this picture is saying? And that's through many different mediums, from sculpture to painting to photography to music. It's not just, hey, that's a cool guitar lick. It's just like, oh, but where is that guitar lick in the mix? And, how does it add to the overall flow of the song? And, things like that. Like for instance, with Dance On, you'll notice that like a lot of the song is just drums. And the guitar kind of picks up here and there. And then obviously it builds towards, the big solo near the end. But this song itself is actually pretty sparse instrumentality wise, which I think is also an artistic choice for a song that's kind of about what it's about, and again, I guess this is the section where we talk about this stuff, and then we'll get into the lyrics. But with the song being primarily drums, the drums themselves are essentially kind of like a march. Right? A march towards war, a march, you're marching towards something bad, and in my opinion, the little in-betweens with the drums are kind of like trying to break out of that. That's how I interpret the song. It's like, we're marching towards this really terrible stuff. But now it's it's something different right in the middle of all of this craziness. So again, it's so many different ways to interpret this song. That's why I love it. Like, I've done the polls, I've done the videos. This is by far a lot of people's least favorite song on Lovesexy, and I'm like, you're all fools. This song is so amazing. You don't even understand.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll be able to sell some people on the song in ways that they haven't been sold before. So let's dig into the lyrics.
Yes.
Okay, so after the opening, ow, you have somebody in the background saying, "Pick it up," and then kind of like it's a little bit lower in the mix. There's a woman. I don't know. I've read somewhere it's Cat. I'm not sure if it's credited.
I'd have to listen. I honestly don't even remember that. I just listened to it like 3 times this morning, and I think it's so low in the mix. I don't think I heard
It's
it.
it's very low. It's very low. It's one of those like if you don't have the lyrics in front of you to tell you that there's something being said here, there's another line later on in the song that's kind of like the same way, where it's almost muttered under the the vocalist's breath
Yeah.
and hidden in the music. But there's a line, there's a bass guitar in this, which I find I don't know, I just find that funny because like, oh, okay, cool. So Levi's there, I guess, or Prince maybe if he's playing guitar, but um, this one is credited on Prince Vault being like a band effort. So it's got, of course, Prince and Dr. Fink and Bonnie Boyer and Levi Caesar Jr. and Miko Weaver and Sheila E. They're all on Prince Vault as being credited as performing on this song in some form or fashion, whether it's just vocals or whether it's instruments as well. So I don't know. It doesn't credit Cat, but I thought I read somewhere somebody thought it was Cat saying this. Could be Sheila, could be Bonnie. Who knows? I don't know if there's any relevance to that.
Well, there's a bass guitar in this is I think it's indicative of the line coming up about the bass guitar as well.
True. Yes. Yes. Looking forward to it's in verse 3. So yeah. You're probably right.
Yeah.
Let's get a little foreshadowing.
Yes.
Okay. So then the first two real lines of lyrics: grenade launcher roars in a television sky. Tell me how many young brothers must die. So it's a really quick, short verse there to start off the song. With this first verse, you're already kind of like getting that whole feel that I talked about already with a pulled from the headlines, or maybe talking about things like war, grenade launchers. I mean, those are typically things you don't, especially domestically here in the United States. Thankfully, we're not subjected to a lot of grenade launchers constantly being fired off, with some sort of internal conflicts happening in the United States. But, across the world, there seems to always be some sort of internal conflicts, wars between countries, where this is like a daily thing, a daily reality for them. So yeah. I get that within the television sky, meaning like the person's talking about this being seen on the TV as opposed to it being something that they're experiencing firsthand.
Well, I mean, there's the old saying of like, what's the difference between American media and international media? And it's that American media shows the bomb launching, international media shows where it lands. Yeah. So it's kind of that, right? But I feel like the young brothers line, tell me how many young brothers must die, is also about just, how many people of color end up being, convinced to join the American military just for them to have a semblance of, a normal life and have the opportunity to go to college and whatnot. So there are actually a lot of people of color, I wouldn't even just say black, there's a lot of people of color who joined the military to even just be on the same level as somebody who might have been born into more privilege and more wealth and didn't have to do that to actually have any of those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the line, tell me how many young brothers must die, is, I feel, reflective of that, of just how many people are going and joining the military and going overseas to fight a war that, if they had been born with more, they would have never even made that choice.
Right, as opposed to it being two disconnected lines where the first line's talking about maybe foreign wars and us watching those wars on television versus something domestically, how many young brothers must die in gang violence or incarceration, at the hands of police, whatever. So it can be, I think, probably taken both ways, but I like your interpretation because that makes the two lines feel connected as opposed to disconnected.
Well, I
So
feel like this song itself is about the duality of the wars. There's a lot of wars happening in this song. So there is the kind of local war, right? Then there's the actual wars, national wars, but also there's this war of, again, the song, the beat of the song, and how it's broken up. There's it like the song is even fighting itself because, again, it's the realization, and are you just gonna ignore it?
mhm. All right, so it's a very short verse, as I mentioned, and then we just get to a short chorus where they just say, and I say they because this sounds to me like it's not just Prince singing.
Oh, definitely.
Sounds to me like it's a chorus of vocalists. Dance on, and that's repeated again.
Yeah.
And again, this is where you have to kind of come to your own conclusion. Is he telling you, despite grenade launchers roaring and brothers dying, do we just dance on? And
Right.
kind of saying just keep marching forward. Don't let this negativity or this the violence get you down. Continue to dance on, enjoy life. Or is it saying, people are just dancing on despite all this? So
Or again, like just harkening back to, say, let's go crazy, right? Is dance on God? Like, is dance on accepting God? Like third interpretation, Eloy throws in at the last minute. It's like it's these terrible things. You have to dance on, accept God, because that's, was a lot in his music. So
yeah, and this is a little bit why I feel like even this song, despite I think a lot of people's feeling like it doesn't really, like it's the sore thumb of Lovesexy, or it's the redheaded stepchild of Lovesex, like it just doesn't seem to fit thematically. I disagree, and I think that this one can definitely fit thematically with the rest of the album, even though it doesn't refer to Spooky Electric or Lovesexy explicitly, or even talk about God explicitly, but there's ways to interpret it as being a fitting piece of the narrative.
exactly.
All right, then moving on to verse 2, we have Little Talk Johnny blew the big score. The gang nailed his feet to a wooden floor. Nuclear band never stays in tune. They all know the words, but the music is doomed. So verse 2, I just wanted to point out the way it's performed. Like, the nuclear band never stays in tune. To me, that sounds like Bonnie. Does that sound like Bonnie to you?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's totally Bonnie.
Okay. I because it doesn't state that in like any of the credits,
Yeah.
but I mean, I don't want to say that's definitely Bonnie without making sure and talking with somebody else about that.
I would say it's definitely Bonnie, and the reason why is because there's like a soulfulness to it.
Yeah.
Because the other woman who would have sung it was Sheila, and Sheila would have been more like "Nuclear band never stays in tune," or something like that. Whereas Bonnie's like, like she's got attitude in there.
Yeah.
She's all up and down the scales. Like, no, it was definitely Bonnie.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm like 98% sure it's Bonnie, but let me just double check with Eloy.
I'll go 99. I'm 99% sure.
All right, we're up to 99.
If it's a 1% chance that that's Sheila, good job, Sheila. You killed it. But
yeah, totally. Okay, so in verse 2, then we've got some different imagery to kind of talk about and pour over. What do you see here in verse 2 that you wanted to point out?
Well, I think that there's Little Talk Johnny, I think, is a thing, because the last time that we've heard the name Johnny was in America. So I actually really like connecting these two songs personally, because in that song you have Johnny who doesn't like America and doesn't want to stand up for the flag and all that stuff. So of course that kid joins a gang. And of course now he's he spoke a little bit too much and he ended up blowing the big score for his gang, and there's some retribution there, and that sucks, but that's essentially the breakdown of it. More gang violence, but this is not even just normal gang violence. This is gang violence. You're even fighting your own friends, your own allies. So this is a lot of infighting here, and it's not even, hey, it's us against the world. It's us against each other. which is, I think, also evocative of, what this song is kind of pointing towards.
Yeah, Little Talk Johnny. So, I mean, the opposite of that would be Big Talk Johnny. So, like, Little Talk Johnny, is that supposed to kind of mean, do you think, somebody who is, doesn't have a lot to say, doesn't have a lot of meaningful things to say? Instead of being all talk, he's like no talk. What do you think that means?
For me, it's little talk means like he blabbed a secret, like, or essentially he blabbed a secret by talking. But it wasn't big talk. He wasn't going around boasting. It's little talk. So it's more like he spilled the beans on a secret.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he blew the big score, so you kind of get some context clues there that this is what happened. There must have been something that Johnny did that didn't work out great for the gang that he's in.
That's where the little talk. So it's little talk is why they blew the big score, in my opinion. So yeah. So I mean, that's the crazy thing about this song is like there's so much in every line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I read that and heard it, and I'm just like, I wonder exactly what he's trying to say with little talk, because you don't necessarily hear that being used that often. Typically, it's like somebody's, a big talker. You hear that much more often than a little talker.
Well, the other way to interpret that would be that it's little Johnny who talked.
Yeah, there you
so
go.
It's little talk Johnny now. Maybe it just worked out better, because sometimes it's like I have to hit a certain number of syllables for this line, so it's like I could have said little Johnny talked too much and blew the big score, but I need to figure out how to condense that, so little talk Johnny works, I think, in that respect.
Yeah. Good point. So yeah, we're going from gang violence again, which is a little more, speaking about more domestic issues, to then nuclear war, like all in the same verse. So it's again talking kind of like how you can interpret that first verse to meaning something that's happened elsewhere, not on your front lawn, to something that is happening right in front of you in the same way, like this verse seems to be doing. Nuclear band never stays in tune. They all know the words, but the music is doomed. It's just, again, gives me that same imagery about, or same fears about nuclear war that Prince was expressing in 1999.
But also this mirrors the first part, whereas the first, in the beginning, it was one line about local, one line about international. Now we're to 4 lines, and 2 of them are about local, and then 2 of them are kind of about international. So there's a balance kind of going on here in, what he's talking about and where he's distributing the lyrics.
Yeah, and I just get that he's basically saying nuclear bans don't really work because somebody who really wants to start a nuclear war is going to find a way to do it. They're going to, make these weapons, even though they're quote unquote banned. I find it interesting that, what he's trying to say is criminal activity, whether it's on a global scale or a local scale, is still going to happen. And there's only so much you can do to basically prevent it.
Yeah. Well, and I feel too, it's like a nuclear ban. Again, we can take that internationally and actually talk about, again, the march towards the worst outcome, which would be a nuclear war. But also, if we even shift that now to just thinking about it locally, like the nuclear option for gangs are to, essentially they'll all just explode in gun violence and death, and everybody will just kill each other. So like there's that as well, even if we wanted to shift the focus, to just kind of gang violence.
Mm-hmm. I like the line, they all know the words, but the music is doomed. I think that's kind of a cool way of basically saying everybody knows what's up, but it doesn't matter, because I think the situation is basically doomed from the start. Or you all know how to sing along to the song, I should say, but it's going to end up in violence or end up in some sort of really bad situation, even though everybody's speaking the same language.
Exactly. Everybody knows the song, everybody knows the words, but they can't stay in tune, so you're not going to have good music, you're not going to have that good outcome. So yeah,
Not going to have harmony. Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
Harmony, that's a good way. Yeah, because it's like, everybody should come together, but it's not happening.
Hmm. Anything else with that second verse you wanted to highlight, Eloy?
No, no. Honestly, it's weird, right? Because as much as each line can be a 20-minute conversation unto itself, I think we did good here. Like, a gang nailed his feet to a wooden floor is kind of self-explanatory. I noticed we kind of skipped over that one because
it's pretty gruesome
it's
image.
self-explanatory. It's just imagery for the overall thing. There's nothing really to decode there.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, he could have inserted any kind of like violent line, like, got his brains blown out or something, but he wanted to give us an image that we probably don't often think about, and that's somebody's feet being nailed to a wooden floor, which is eesh. I don't like thinking about that too much, but
yeah, I agree. I think that was more just to rock your brain, and it's one thing if he was just to say, and gang violence is bad, and if people would be like, yeah, you're right, it is bad. But like, if you say, yeah, this gang nailed his feet to a wooden floor, you're like, oh my gosh. Like, like it's startling in a certain way. So nothing to decode, but I just wanted the fact that he even just put that imagery in there, I think, is a big deal.
Yeah, it's a very visceral image. People can relate to that a little bit closer, or, the pain of experiencing that, or the horror of experiencing that more than just somebody's gotten, killed.
Yeah.
All right, so then we get the chorus again, and there's a bit more repeated dance-ons. This is kind of like a musical break here. The chorus expands a little bit longer than it did between verses 1 and 2. And then eventually we get to the third verse. A bass guitar and spider webs, longing for the funk. Uzi gun takes his place in a wagon trunk. And then in the background here somebody say, get off me, punk, you ain't sexy. Stealing ladies' purses, then setting them aflame. M&M killers playing Mickey Mouse games.
There you go.
I would say the third verse has some of the most interesting, most memorable lyrics in the song.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's a very third verse thing for Prince to do. I mean, maybe not just a Prince thing. It might be just a songwriting technique to switch things up by the third verse to make things a little more interesting, prevent it from getting stale.
What I will say is that a lot of songs don't even have third verses. So, like, songwriting etiquette or, general consensus is, usually you have two strong ones. If you have a third one, there better be a good reason to have it. So,
well, he usually has a pretty good reason to have it, because I love Prince's third verses typically, like, as a rule.
I agree. Well, I agree. I'm just saying, like, if this had come in, like, if this had been the second verse and then we got the second verse as the third verse, it wouldn't have been as powerful. Like, this third verse needed to be amazing. Plus, we get the bass line, boom, 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 like, freaking love that bass line.
Yeah. And that's, just apropos, because this is the line, a bass guitar and spiderwebs longing for the funk, which I get imagery of, like, just a bass guitar that's not being used. It's collecting spiderwebs or dust, or however you want it. And longing for the funk, meaning like it's simply just sitting idle, not being used the way it's supposed to be. Why it was built and created to begin with is to play bass notes, and bass is a very funky instrument. So if you play it in a certain way, you're going to get some serious funk out of it, and that's Prince did that. Obviously, a lot of his funkiest songs have an amazing bass line to them.
Right, and then that goes along with the Uzi gun takes its place in a wagon trunk, meaning that, the young kids today, they're not learning music and creativity, they're learning how to pick up a gun and how to kill each other. And that's, that's basically what he's saying is, like, you should be playing music, you should be playing the bass, And there was one thing, too, with the spiderwebs for me, is that the idea of spooky electric always kind of came off as kind of creepy, kind of like spidery, like legs. So it almost felt like when he says bass guitar and spider webs, it almost seemed like it was also part of the spooky electric kind of story that was being told here, and that, it's almost spooky electric's fault that, it it covered your bass in spider webs, and lured you to gang violence. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, like it's like a haunted house type of situation where you go to
Yeah.
the creepy basement that Spooky Electric lives in, and
Well,
you glance over and you see a bass guitar covered in spider webs because he's kind of trapped, and
there's also a thing about spider webs where if there's enough spider webs, you can't even see the thing that's under it.
True.
So it could even just be that, the base is there, but the kid is so drawn into the act, the Uzi gun and the violence and the death that he can't even see the thing that's staring him right in the face because it's so covered with spider webs. That's it. The imagery is interesting and can be taken further in a lot of different directions. That's, what I'm saying right now probably wasn't even the initial intent, but that's how I interpret it.
Yeah, no, I mean it's all good, and the fact that we know that there's a bass guitar in this because we were told, and then we hear it. I just love how they bring that back. So thanks for making me aware, or connecting the dots basically from that seemingly non sequitur line at the very very beginning of the song to this third verse.
Well, I mean, there's been a bass the whole time, but it has been kind of underneath
Yeah,
the rest of it, and none of it's been funky. The whole rest of the song is and like
yeah,
that's
just
it just
chugging
does that
along.
over
Yeah,
and over again. So it is an impressive thing that at this point the bass jumps out and like it's like, hey, look at me, by the way.
hmm. And also when you mentioned like quote unquote kids, young adults, kids, however you want to describe teenagers in early 20s. Likely, it's not explicitly mentioned as such, but likely being, the perpetrators or the people that he's talking about here. I mean, he says young brothers in the first verse, and then, a lot of people that are in gangs tend to be of the younger generation at the
Yeah.
time. That's who they're targeting, is the young folks, the ones who don't maybe have a great home life or are living in poverty. They're looking for that surrogate family. So then that last line, Eminem killers playing Mickey Mouse games, really kind of to me speaks to that, how it's the young people that are typically being caught up in this violence and in this
Right.
cycle of violence.
Oh, I completely agree with that. And it's again like, and it's connected to the line before, the stealing ladies' purses and setting them aflame, meaning there's all of this violence and crime and activity, but it has no purpose. You didn't steal the
Mhm.
lady's purse to get the money. No, you just stole it and then you burned it. Like, who cares? Let's go steal the next one and burn it too. It's
Yeah,
like it's all about chaos and just the chaos and the destructive nature of it all, and not towards any specific goal.
yeah, crime for the sake of crime, violence for the sake of violence, not really seemingly done for any specific reason other than because chaos rules, and
Right.
like you said. So I just like the play on words there, and then the way it's sung and performed at the end, with Bonnie's vocals really kind of prominent there. Eminem killers playing Mickey Mouse games.
Yeah.
It's pretty damn memorable, and even if some of the lines, if you're struggling to understand or comprehend, that line to me is clear as day, and I
Yes.
like that. Get off me, punk! You ain't sexy. What's going on there? First of all, who do you think says that? Maybe Levi. I'm not sure.
It sounded like Levi.
Yeah.
If the two options here listed are Levi and Miko, and I think it sounded more like Levi, but I mean it could have been Miko. You can never really tell.
No.
But I think it sounded more like Levi.
Yeah, and it's more just because it's fun to speculate, not because it really matters
It doesn't really
who
matter.
said it. I mean, it wasn't Prince. It definitely didn't sound like Prince to me. So
Or
yeah,
it
it
could
is.
matter because Levi is the bass player. So we
Yeah.
just got done talking about the bass, and it almost seems like, so Uzi Gun takes its place in a wagon trunk. It could be like somebody was going to try and take his bass away to give him an Uzi. And he's just like, "Oh, get off me, punk! You ain't sexy." Like, no, you ain't taking my bass. I'm
Yeah,
gonna,
whoever's
I'm
trying to
gonna
take
keep
his
playing
bass
the
is not
bass.
sexy. So maybe Spooky
Right
Electric's trying to take it.
there, you go. Could be, or I think he was just using sexy as like you ain't cool, you ain't what you think you are. You're not about to take my bass from me. So yeah, I think that's probably what it is. So honestly, I think that that's even more evidence that it's probably Levi.
Yeah, I agree. I just thought it did for sure, and then when you put it in the context of where it fits in with the verse, and because otherwise you're like, okay, well, because the next line's talking about stealing ladies' purses.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean, I don't think, man purses were much of a thing in the late 80s. So I doubt whoever is saying this line is referring to his purse being snatched.
Yeah.
So,
but that's actually pretty interesting because, we're saying he plays the bass guitar. Somebody tries to steal the bass guitar and he's like, get off me, punk. And so they are unsuccessful. So what do? They just steal some ladies' purses. So even that part, the imagery and stuff, it's like they couldn't get the bass from Levi, but now they're just going to go steal some purses. So it is kind of interesting, like how the lines flow. They have a flow to them.
yeah, no, I agree. I like it. I like how it flows. And that, like I said, that verse is my personal favorite of the four that we're going to be talking about. For that reason, for the last line, I just like the imagery. Just, I don't know, it just kind of hits home more, I guess, because it's talking about music and violence and just kind of like really senseless stuff, like senseless violence, which
Yeah.
we can all relate to a little bit better because we hear about that, locally. Like we turn on our own news and our local news, and we hear about stupid, crime. That why did you do that, or what was the purpose of this? And
Yeah.
you read the police blotter and you see stuff like that, where like nuclear war and grenade launchers. Yeah, those are more horrific because they're more the loss of life is much greater with those types of actions, but they do feel a little bit disconnected because they're not typically occurring here on our soil and in our backyards. Dance On Again is the chorus, so I'm not going to repeat that. But verse 4 is Prince is trying to get a little more reflective and a little more, I don't know, I guess he's trying to give us some food for thought. It's time for a new education. The former rules don't apply. We need a power structure that breeds production instead of jacks who vandalize. And then here's the other line that I was kind of referring to or alluding to before, where it's really quiet, and if you don't have the lyrics in front of you to even know that something's being said here, you might completely miss it. And this is where Prince says, Detroit, what's happening?
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I definitely heard that line.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I mean, I hear it now because I know it exists, but I couldn't tell you, like, oh, yeah, my favorite line is the Detroit, what's happening? Because I don't even know if I heard it, to be quite honest, before. So it's funny how that works.
Anybody's favorite line, especially not anybody from Detroit, I guess.
No, of course not. But but besides that last line, let's talk about what he's saying here. It's time for new education. Former rules don't apply. And he says this a little bit like, I don't know, like in a way that he's done before. Like I've heard him do this kind of thing before.
Well, it's like on Controversy. We need a new breed leader, for instance.
Oh, like in Sexuality, yeah.
Sexuality, excuse me. It's like in Sexuality then. Edit that so that I sound smarter than I am. But no, so it's kind of like that, though, where he states up front, he's like, Dance On is a song about what's wrong. Hey, by the way, we could fix this if we wanted to. Right? It's like, it's just about wanting to. And it's about wanting to on a large scale, like systemically wanting to. So, we need new education. And that has actually been the next line being former rules don't apply. That's kind of the big thing, right? Is for systemic change, you can't try to tweak what exists. You have to remove what is there and create something new. Otherwise, the remnants of what was already there will just continue to pervade the new system. So, and that is what has been stated many, many times in political circles. But of course, I'll stop complaining because our politicians suck and they don't listen to people. They just, they love the status quo. But songs like this are kind of there to point out the status quo is really, really bad. And we kind of need a different status quo. So then, of course, we need a power structure that breeds production instead of jacks who vandalize. And it's that we need that new education to go towards prosperity for all and not putting so many young people, especially young people of color, into these kind of weird funnels that kind of just funnel them right into, I mean, a lot of them prison. It's kind of crazy. Like, I'm so lucky that I ended up not growing up in, super bad neighborhoods that had lots of gang violence, because I mean, I could have just ended up just like everybody here that Prince is singing about.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those kind of deep verses where he's wanting to express like disillusionment, I guess, with the current systems and current laws that are in place, how they're maybe not quite as fair or equitable for all of us as the way they're supposed to be. At least that's what the Constitution's supposed to tell us, that we're all equal, but we all kind of know better that it also depends on how much money you have. It depends on your education, where you grew up. There's a lot of factors in there, and that's why he's like, it's time for a new education, because maybe the educational system that we've got today isn't cutting it, not for everybody at least,
Right.
in a way that it's supposed to. Power structure that breeds production. I like the fact that this is where it kind of ties in for sexuality again, because the use of the word breed, reproduction of a new breed. We need a power structure that breeds production.
Yeah.
It's not a word that you hear a lot. So when he does say the word breed, and he's not talking necessarily about reproduction of people, but something else, like it has a different meaning to it. Instead of jacks who vandalize, like, be productive, build up your communities, build up your your homes and your families, and support that instead of vandalizing, which speaks back to that third verse a bit.
Yeah.
But also with the adding of the line Detroit, what's happening right after that, what it tells me is that he's, for whatever reason, highlighting Detroit. I mean, there's a lot of cities in the United States that have seen increases in poverty and crime due to the disappearance of manufacturing jobs, and a lot of that in the Rust Belt that we've seen in cities like Detroit. But he calls out Detroit. Prince always had like a really strong connection with the city of Detroit throughout his career, and so maybe he just felt like Detroit needed calling out because he loved it so much. Like, you call out the people that you love to make changes, as opposed to like people that you're just not as close to. So
Yeah, I was actually just going to say the same thing. Because Chicago is largely known as, it's it's really, really high up on the list in terms of violent places to live, in terms of violent crimes. But Prince didn't really have much of a connection to Chicago. So, of course, he's going to call out Detroit, which, ends up, I mean, it's less than Chicago, but it's also way more than a lot of other places. So,
right.
So I even just in the recent, statistics and whatnot, like Detroit it's pretty up there. It is still pretty up there, and keeps rising, which is, the really sad part of it all.
Yeah, and this is 34 years ago, so
Yeah.
things haven't really improved that much. So things haven't changed, which is sad, but at least in the late 80s, Detroit was a city that was struggling with crime and with poverty, and Prince felt probably pretty affected by that, knowing his affinity for the city and his fans there. The other thing I wanted to call out, because you mentioned Sexuality, but another song that I thought of when I was listening to this verse, kind of like how it's structured, how the language it's using, even though the messages are a little different, was in All the Critics Love You in New York. So he said, it's time for new education. It's the first line here. But in All the Critics Love You in New York, he says, it's time for a new direction. So it's almost like identical. It's time for a new education. It's time for a new direction. Nearly identical first lines there. Kind of changes then differently from there, because after that he says in All the Critics, it's time for a new direction. It's time for jazz to die. 4th day of November, we need a purple high. So it's not identical in terms of the messaging there, but I did think it was interesting that that first line and that verse for both of those songs are almost identical, with the switching of direction and education.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, and that's kind of the thing is there were certain songs where Prince was like, all right, guys, seriously, please listen to me now. It's, and like, it's time for is actually, that's a pretty like strong stance to take, like it's time for this, please, let's do this. So yeah, no, I like the correlation, of those two songs as well. So yeah, most definitely. And also I was just looking up, the crime rates, just recent crime rates, and Detroit is actually number 2 per capita.
In Chicago.
Actually Chicago, because it's per capita, it's not main. It's not like just the sheer number. It's also based on population. So Chicago is the number 17.
Wow.
And Detroit is number 2.
What's number 1?
Number 1, St. Louis, Missouri. I don't think I was expecting that number. Or that.
Well, as a former resident of St. Louis, I can kind of speak a little bit to that.
Yeah.
Not that I don't know if anybody's listening is that interested, but I know another podcast guest of mine, Richard Cole, lives in St. Louis, and so he understands the way it is as well. But St. Louis has a weird, like the way that the boundary lines are. They have the city of St. Louis and they have the county of St. Louis. The city of St. Louis is literally just like the city limits, and it doesn't expand beyond that. So all of the crime is very concentrated in a fairly small population, small dense population. Like the city of St. Louis only has like 300,000 people or so. The metro area of St. Louis is 2 million or so. So those crime rates based off per capita really, it hurts St. Louis because there is unfortunately a lot of crime in the city itself, but they don't have the luxury of expanding their metro area beyond to accompanying or borderline suburbs where maybe the crime rate's a little less, so that it kind of like dilutes that number a bit. It's very concentrated because it is just the city of St. Louis, while other cities expand their borders and their municipality lines outward a bit more. So
exactly. Yeah, I definitely was noticing that when I was looking at it, because it's not just the number, but it's also based on population. So since it's a high number and a low population, that's why that one, and Detroit, because Detroit's just under 700,000, but also has a high number of total violent crimes. And I'm going violent crimes here, not every crime.
Yeah.
Whereas Chicago is also high, but since it's per capita, that's divided into 2.7 million instead of into 670,000. So it seems like it's lower, even though it's still very bad. But that's why Detroit is so high up on the list. It's number 2. So Prince was correct. Prince was right.
Yeah. Unfortunately for Detroit, he was right.
Yes.
Well, then the song isn't really all that long. It's about, 3.5 minutes long.
3 minutes, 46 seconds.
Okay, so 3 3/4.
Yeah.
All right, so then the outro, this is where you get some different lines, and it's, again, because a lot of the song is a multi-voice, multi-vocals.
Yeah.
The outro is no different. So there's a woman saying, to my ears, a woman saying, "What color is your money today?" And then lots of different voices, including Prince's, I hear, then say, follow that up with, "Get your money straight."
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of keep going back and forth between those two lines. What color is your money today? Get your money straight. What color is your money today? Get your money straight.
Everybody dance on.
That's really like the last handful of lines.
Yeah.
So now we're talking money. Like, money really hadn't been referred to in the song. It had been talking about all these other things and never really kind of touching on money or poverty, even though it was implied, I think, in a lot of ways, but it never explicitly talked about money. So, like, what color is your money today? Like, that line's interesting to me. What color is your money today? Do you have any thoughts on, like, what is he trying to say with the color of your money?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that he is specifically saying that uh, money is basically hoarded by people of a certain ethnicity, if you want to say, and
Yeah.
basically, kind of the crux of the song is like if you're poor and black, you don't have the luxury of playing music. You either have to join the military or you have to join a gang. Uh, but if money was more equitable, and if money was quote unquote straight, as he says in this thing, then the color of the money wouldn't necessarily be in question. The color would be green because that's the color of our money, instead of what it seems like he's implying with this is that money is white, essentially.
Hmm.
So that's what I got from it, at least.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I kind of wonder, like, color is your money today? Like, is he calling for people of color to be spending money within their own communities and supporting, like, black businesses, black owned businesses? Not to say that like, literally the money's going to change color. Obviously it doesn't, but you could say, like, well, the color of my money, like the money I'm making or the money I'm spending, I'm going to, spend it in black communities or black owned businesses, or, Hispanic or Latino, anything like that. And you could say, like, the color of the money maybe is spreading throughout my own community. So therefore it's kind of like symbolically changing the color of it.
I think so. I think that I don't know if Prince was as forward facing to be talking about, about, like, what is it, ethical economics, like how we talk about it today. But I can see that I mean, there's definitely something to it. Like, he's in that atmosphere, I think, without necessarily having a plan, which is, I think, part of what is interesting about a lot of Prince's music, where he is kind of talking about certain things. He really kind of likes to present these larger ideas of just how the world should be, but doesn't necessarily, give any sort of plan to that. It's not like, all right, we need a power structure that breeds productions, go. It's just like, oh, it's like, how do you expect us to do that, Prince? Well,
What do they
um,
call it? They call those thought leaders.
yes. So I like that, right? I mean, and that's kind of where he is with that. So what color is your money today was like the start of the, ethical economics kind of movement that we have today, which is like, hey, you don't spend your money in a business that doesn't reflect your values or the way that you want the world to be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of what I get. Get your money straight. It's just another way of saying, like, get your game right, get your money right. Don't spend money places that don't need your money or that aren't, like you said, ethical, and try to find different avenues for making money and spending your money. And just beware. It's kind of like with the knowing where your food sources come from. Like, know where your money's going.
Well, and
Um,
I think too that might be what you just said kind of sparked another idea, which is, if you think about blood money, like there are people here who are in this song who are, gang members, and they're committing all this violence, and they probably have some money, but it's all blood money, which means that money would be red. So you want to get your money straight and get it back. You want cleaner money. You don't want to have to get money the way that you're getting it. But again, that only is going to happen through systemic change, which is what that last section was talking about.
I agree. Okay. Well, I don't know. Do we have anything else we wanted to talk about with Dance On? Any other overarching themes that you think we've missed? I think we covered it, but
I
I
think
want to
we
let
hit
you.
it. It just seems so weird to me again, and I'll just point it out again that, like, people sleep on this song and they think it's just like a whatever song and it doesn't fit, and it doesn't have, like, we literally, this is a big song, and we literally just talked for an hour about all of the underlying messages, and these are not small messages. All of these are huge. Like, this song, I feel, should be higher up on a lot of people's lists than it actually is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just the music is a little awkward at times, like the way that the drums are kind of chopped up. I wonder if that, kind of makes people feel a little sort of way about the song, like they don't love it from a musicality standpoint. It's kind of a jarring, interesting composition musically, but I think it fits with the lyrics because the lyrics are kind of jarring as well. And with that, it does kind of sound like a little bit like a machine gun or even a marching, like like there's something going on with that. I mean, it wasn't just kind of an interesting musical choice. I think it was fitting along with the themes of the song and how it was presented. Like, even though the chorus is, like you said, bright and airy and got some nice keyboards and the drums seem to come back together, but during the verses, it seems very sparse and harsh almost.
Yeah,
the way it's presented, and that matches the lyrics. So, good job,
Prince
and company.
You did a good job writing this song.
Pat you on the back there, man.
Yes.
All right, Eloy, what do you got going on, man? I mean, I know you got a lot going on, so why don't you share what you've got going on with the folks listening to this episode?
Oh, you know me, I always have a ton going on. Well, I mean, definitely go check out Prince's Friend, the YouTube channel. We were a little bit sparse in our uploads in the second half of last year due to a few different personal things. However, we're going to be picking that back up here in 2022. So go subscribe to that channel, Prince's Friend, and you'll have a fun time with us. We have it took me 6 months to finally get to coming back to the channel because I can't wait to talk about Welcome to America. And I know everybody probably has already talked Welcome to America to death, but like, I'm only just now about to talk about it and I'm excited. So there's that. And then obviously also go check out my band, Strays of the World. Our first album, In My Head, was also released in the first half of 2021. And then also I kind of wasn't able to promote it as much as I would have liked in the second half. So it's still out there. Go check it out, straysoftheworldmusic.com. Go listen to the first album. If you like it, pick up a copy. I think it'll be fun. It's really good music, or, I'm biased, so.
No, it is. I dig it. I like your album a lot. And
the next album is on the way. So the next album is coming. It's going to be 10, possibly 11 songs. I'm still debating whether to put that 11th song on there or not. But it's really, really good. You guys will not be disappointed.
Sweet. All right. Well, let me know when you get some songs up, and I'll blast them out there as well, because your music's great, and I always want to support whoever's on my show and their personal and creative endeavors, because it's all about, kind of supporting, and got a little bit of a community going on here. We need to support each other for sure.
100%, dude. Thank you so much. I always appreciate your support, and you do good stuff here too. So I'm always here to support you as well.
Thank you, Eloy, and thanks to all the listeners. This has been the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast. I've been your host, Jason Brenninger. Find the show on your favorite social media platform, Press Rewind Pod. Got a Discord out there now, so we talk Prince, talk specific songs, talk podcast episodes. We try to have some fun there, and I try to share stuff. Yeah, even have a YouTube channel now, trying to share things that I come across besides just podcast episodes. So hopefully everybody checks it out. And until next time, thank you very much. Sincerely, everyone. Goodbye.